Well, people would light them on the dance floor. But if lighting was all over, intruding on your experience while you were dancing, it would be much more effective if you were dancing in a separate room.
Yeah.
So I built a wall, very inexpensive to do, and my brother is very handy, and I'm handy too. And whatever he told me to do, I would just do. Put screws in this sheetrock here every 6 inches. Okay, Joe. I think we had a screw gun back then. Yes, we did, but it had a cord on it.
Um,
it wasn't. It wasn't battery. so
yeah,
we built this club that became the most popular club in New York for like 2-3 years. And then we moved, and that became the blueprint for, first of all, Studio 54 and Paradise Garage look exactly like the gallery, but without certain elements. So that's what it was all about back then. People would go to a club and it would inspire them to build their own kind of thing. And they would add things and change things. That's what it was all about. Ideas were free. And the music was also available to people. Certain DJs won't tell you like what a record is. Larry used to put labels over the label so you wouldn't see the name of the record. And I always thought, well, what is that about? It's about insecurity. It's about you being insecure with yourself. So I was an insecure person about a lot of things, my looks, a lot of different things. But DJing, I felt like I could tell I was good by those 500, 600, 700 people screaming their asses off on the dance floor. And then Love Is the Message came along. And I was the first person to play that. And they started chanting, "Turn this motherfucker out." Now, I had never heard that chant in New York or anywhere else before. And it became synonymous with that record and me. And it was a wild journey. And of course, it was the 70s, and I got hooked on drugs. That's the whole story in a nutshell.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, Nicky, is that I mean, there's a lot of little pieces inside of that, and
it's all in the book. IDJ.
but the one thing that I'm really curious about is because I think you're a pioneer and a pioneer of a lot of different things. And you're mentioning the clubs and you're mentioning things, and that all of that's very, very true. And I think, 100%. But a big thing for me is that, if you were to take the genre of high energy, I think you created that. And the reason I say that is because even when you watch you now doing it, and you can play that 90 BPM track that's funk or soul or whatever, but it's 90 BPM funk and soul with a high energy touch because it's got Nicky Siano behind the decks and that high energy thing. So
Can
you
you
know,
feel it? Can you feel it? Funky
it can,
sensation.
yeah,
I
turn that
love
mother.
when she says it's like an extra strength painkiller. I love that line in Funky Sensation. It's
So,
like
so,
an
so,
extra strength painkiller. That's what a
so when,
funky sensation is like.
what were you aware that you were? Was this what I mean? When you're mixing, when you're picking your sounds, when you're picking these records, were you aware that were you looking for those energy touches? Was that part and parcel of your critique of a record that you were looking for that energy in that record? Because everything you seem to play, even though I've heard it 100, like let if you take Donna Summer, I Feel Love. Okay, we all know that was a massive record. It was a
And
huge,
then I go into Native New Yorker, and it's a whole different vibe and a whole different,
yeah,
energy. And it's still high energy, right?
it's
It's
still high
still
energy. If I
right.
did, if I did that, it would be a totally different energy. So I'm looking at you going, how do you manage to do? How do you, what are the nuances you're looking for to get that, And that was the amazing thing about Nicky Siano for me is because there are many amazing things, but this is one of that I wanted to kind of try and nail in this conversation was this high energy thing, Nicky. If you can bottle that and sell that, I'm buying the first 100 cases. So
There were so many great records back then that were slower, and I looked for great music. That's was my criteria for playing a record. This song has got to be good. And I would go through I at my height before the record pool, we were getting 50, 60 records a week from record companies, not going to the record pool, but just getting them because they knew when I played a record a lot, other DJs played it a lot, and it got on the charts before it even got play on the radio because sales were generated by all these DJs in New York playing the records.
Yeah.
And Love's theme is a big example that it went all the way up to, I think, 110 before radio ever got on it. And it was all DJs generating sales. Not on the play side, but on the sales side of the record charts. And that was never heard of. I mean, there was no way to make a record a hit without radio in the late 60s. Then rock and roll got a little bit of a push from college radio stations that all of a sudden started going heavily on different rock and roll songs. But the real thing that took the genie out of the bottle were the club DJs starting in 1971 and 72 that formed a little coalition. We were friends. That was the coalition. We were friends. We'd go out to breakfast together after we worked at night at the only place that was open, this little diner in the village, like 8 of us and 10 of us sometimes. And that little group would propel these records to super stardom. Soul Makossa was a nothing record. It was an import. And when I went to the record store and I heard it, and it was in Brooklyn, I said, how many copies you got there? He said 12. I said, give them all to me. And I gave them to my friends. Woman and Wild Safari. David Mancuso returned from Spain with 9 copies of that record and gave it to all of us. And that's how we worked. And that's how unbeknownst to us, we weren't planning to say, okay, you play this record every hour. No, this is what we did because we loved the music, and it was a new type of music specifically that we were feeling. It was what they were calling back then danceable R&B. That's what they were calling it at the record companies. Yeah.
Another big thing that I was always curious about, because I mean, I mean, a lot of people think Studio 54, but you were really, really successful. You had this almost
Way before studio. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
I was the one who was making them, giving them the ability to open studio and be successful, because
yeah,
without
yeah.
my work and the other DJs who were in that little small group, this whole thing might have not happened or might have gone in a different direction. It was all of us on the same page,
Yeah.
working with the same music and the same ideas about the sound and the lighting, and we all saw eye to eye on a lot of things.
This is why I was curious. I mean, you had this cult following. You had this name. You had the excitement going. You had the talent and everything. And Steve Rubell comes into your life, and I was curious how he managed to convince you to do the Studio 54 thing, because at that time you could have done something similar yourself. So I was always curious of how that part, because I mean, even the movie, the Studio 54 movie, I don't think
Doesn't even mention either me or Richie Kazar, who were the two DJs who were
yeah,
behind studio. Never even mentions our name.
yeah, and I
It,
found that terrible. I found that, I've got to be honest and
it's
say that I was,
sad. It's
yeah,
really sad. I think one person says Richie in the whole movie. It was
yeah,
really so sad to me that the thing that drove that club, the music and the lights, they didn't even talk about the two most important people. And Robert Da Silva, who was the light man, was never given credit for what he did with their incredibly comprehensive and very, very hard to work lighting system,
yeah,
because they had 4 people working the lights at once. So back in the old days, it was a theater. He was on a headphone with the microphone, and I would be in front of him, ready to turn up the treble like I do on certain parts. And I hear him going, okay, on my mark, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the Mylar curtain would just come down right when I turned up the treble, and it would hit people in the heads and go right back up. And that kind of thing was so unusual and so spontaneous. People were freaking out. They were freaking the fuck out. It was like you were at a Broadway show, but not only were you at it, you were in it. You were on the stage and you were in that Broadway show. And then the confetti cannons would go off, and you'd be wearing those little sparkles all the next day to work, because they'd get in your pores, and someone would come over to you and say, what is that on your face? Those were the amazing things. Gallery opened in 72. Studio opened in 77. So did Paradise Garage. So there was a lot of foundation built before studio ever came along. But I met Steve Rubell not at Studio 54, but when he opens a club called Enchanted Gardens on the Douglaston Golf Course in 75. He opens a place in Queens, and a record company executive, Billy Smith, who was responsible for Love's Theme and Barry White and pushing them to success along with the DJs, brought me to a dinner with Steve and him in the dining room of the Douglaston Golf Course Enchanted Enchanted Gardens location. And we were just alone. It had an open jet. And we sat there and we talked about the club. And he said, and Billy said, wouldn't it be great if Nicky could work like a weekday here? I know he wouldn't work a weekend because he's at gallery, but how about a weekday? And I said, oh, I would do that. That would be fun. Just like 2 nights a week wasn't enough for me. I wanted more. I love playing records. I lived to play records.
Mm.
And I played Tuesday nights, and Tuesday night, I was just speaking to Paul Casella, who was the DJ there when I left. He said, Nicky, Tuesday night was the biggest night of the week, which is so unusual. But not only that, after you left, it remained the biggest night of the week for Enchanted Gardens. And I was like, wow, you can really do something and make it work so well that even without you touching it, it remains really strong. And that's what happened. When he opened studio, he didn't even consider anyone else because he knew how I worked and he knew what I could do. Because while he has Enchanted Gardens and Tuesday's his biggest night, he spends every Saturday night, he leaves at 2:00, the Enchanted Gardens, to come to Manhattan and be at gallery for the rest of the night. And he stays until we close at 8 a.m. I was going to tell you about those 6-hour nights. Yeah, gallery was more like 8, 10, 12 hours. And I would come in early and help them decorate to do what I want, how I wanted the balloons and everything. So I would be there from 9 p.m. until 9 a.m.
Wow. That's
So it was a
dedication.
long night.
Yeah, that's dedication. I mean, was Steve Rubell?
That's also owning your own business.
that is owning your own business. Yeah, for sure. I mean, was Steve Rubell as much a marketing genius as that's made out in the public eye, or I mean, you had it firsthand. Because a lot of the ideas that you've spoke about, and so far even in this conversation, was, I mean, these concepts. I know for a fact, for an example, a very famous New Order came over to New York, and they went out clubbing in New York, and they saw some ideas, and then they came back and they opened the Hacienda in London. It's not in Manchester, and that became and Hacienda basically just modeled itself on the New York club scene, and there was nothing like that.
Specifically, Hacienda was the gallery, and the loft is where they went when they came. And that was, the loft and the gallery were very closely related. And that's what they modeled it off of. The loft is where they hung out when they were here. And that was their main influence. And it was great, wasn't it? It was really,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I mean. And then many years later,
one of those clubs that people still talk about.
Oh yes, still talk about it. It's the most legendary club in the UK, and then later came Ministry of Sound, who also took a lot of these ideas.
Paradise Garage. Now that was Paradise Garage Ministry. That was Paradise Garage, but Hacienda was the loft.
The loft, and so was Steve this marketing genius? Was he this guy? I mean, they hear the stories. He left 1,000 people outside, had nobody inside the club, and he was doing that just to create this energy buzz and things. Was that all true, or I mean?
No, it was half true. First of all, as I told you, he had a club before studio, so. When I met him, he was a restaurateur. He owned a failing business called Steak Loft that sold only steaks for dinner, like different cuts of beef. I guess they had chicken too, but it was their thing, steak. And he had a great partner who really knew business, Ian Schrager. Ian was like my Robin was. I was Steve Rebell and Robin was Ian Schrager. And if we didn't get so fucked up on drugs, we would be owning their fucking hotels right now. But we got sidetracked.
Yeah.
And they got fucked up on drugs too, but they remained in business because they were making so much money. So when he came into it, no, he wasn't this genius, this Machiavellian genius. He wasn't that. He was this, do you know the word mensch?
Yeah.
It's a Yiddish, you know it? It
Yeah, I
means
do.
it's a Yiddish word for a good guy, like a really good guy. He was like that. He would give you the shirt off his back. He was always nice, open, hold doors for people, always ask, how are you doing? All that within 3 months was gone when studio opened. It was, okay, this is how I explain it to people. When I was playing at the Enchanted Gardens on Tuesday night, I would do this little thing like I did at Gallery. I would play a Diana Ross record, and then I'd play like a little medley of the old Supreme stuff, like one or two. I'd put on like Love Hangover, and then I'd play, When the Love Light's Burning or Stone Love or something like that.
Yeah.
Steve would run up to the booth and go, Nikki, play another Diana Ross record, please. I love Diana Ross. 2 years later, he's snorting coke with her in his office on 54th Street. What does that do to a person? It was so sudden. 2 years. He knows everyone he ever wanted to know in the music industry and in the arts. He's like going out with Andy Warhol every night. It was really a big shift for him to really change. And he went down a really sad path, which was obvious because he when he died, he was very unhappy. And I spoke to him about 8 months before, and he hid it well, but I could tell at the time I was going for my social work degree. And I could tell he was not happy. And yeah, Nikki, I'm doing good. I'm so happy. And I was asking him about HIV interventions because I was doing a book about HIV interventions because I was so concerned that our fucking president didn't even say the word AIDS or HIV for 7 years, bastard Reagan. Murderer. He was a murderer.
Yeah.
That guy in more ways than one. And so Steve wound up very isolated. A lot of people, and also it didn't do anything for the industry. Disco was dead. Well, I think studio kind of put one of the nails in the coffin with their door policy of you can come in, but you can't. Oh, I'll let you in, but take your shirt off. You know how degrading that is? That's so in front of 500 people, some of them your friends. Oh, you can come in, but that guy next to you, he's wearing polyester. He has to go. And the guy would go in alone.
That's crazy. That's just nuts.
I know, right?
That's just
right?
nuts. I
It
mean,
was.
you not apart from just being this pioneer DJ, legend in the music industry, and all of the things. One of the humane things you mentioned that there was AIDS, and I read that that you had taken a long time out of your schedule in life and really helped a lot of people. And I mean, that's
83 to 96, basically 13 years.
That's amazing, Nikki. And I mean, we have. I mean, I would love to talk about that because I think that's people just look at celebrity people and think that that they're but there's so much substance behind you. There's so much realness about you, and that
Thank you.
that for me that touched me because I think even to this day people of high stature seem to forget about AIDS and forget about HIV and don't want to talk about it. And it's amazing that you actually led the way and got into that. So please tell me about that.
I didn't really lead the way, but I certainly made a difference. And I'm so happy. I mean, I'm so proud of that work that I did because people have come up to me and said, from my book, you saved my life because I gave them alternatives to hold them healthy while they were getting the triple antiretroviral together that didn't come out in until 96. And my book came out in 93. So people were able to hold their healthiness without AZT because it didn't work alone.
Yeah.
It really didn't. As a matter of fact, for a lot of people, it was killing them sooner alone. They were giving it to healthy people. And what I said in my book, you're healthy, take vitamins, take things that will build your immunity to hold it off. And sure enough, it worked for a lot of people, a lot of people until the triple came out and that helped them long term. But even now, I have concerns about that, but I won't go into it. But that was more important to, I gotta say to you, that was more fulfilling and more important to me than any record that
Yeah.
I was involved with. I
And
mean, when you,
and so it should be because it was a remarkable piece of work that you did, Nikki. I
thank you
mean,
so much.
to go on to the sort of music production, because we've discussed your DJing and we've discussed that but you're a man of many things. So you also made a fabulous record to begin your production career. So I mean, I'd love to hear the story behind that.
I was the first DJ to produce a record. They were mixing,
Mm.
they were doing a lot of different things, but no one was producing yet. So the record it's known in certain circles, Kiss Me Again by Dinosaur, which was Arthur Russell and I, really, when you come down to it. And it was mixed by Jimmy Simpson, Valerie Simpson's brother, who I'm happy to say I see him regularly at Ashford and Simpson's Club, Sugar, which is such a cute little establishment. And Valerie's there a lot. And it just, they say what goes around comes around. It just all came around. And it's, I'm very, very grateful right now. I feel very grateful. I really feel like something has really taken care of me all my life. And I've always thought that I wanted to try to give whatever I could to people and make them see that there's love in the world, that you can love yourself, you can love other people without being nasty, and you can make a difference. Anyone can make a difference. When you smile at someone in the morning and say good morning, they act totally different. They're walking down the street and you say good morning and you just go like that and they light up.
Yeah,
Most people, some of
yeah,
them don't, but that's okay. That's
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And it changes a lot of people's day. It sort of shifts in the moment what they're seeing in life.
Yeah. So
So important.
do you surround yourself with, I mean, I have this habit where I learned through the years that I mean, there are a lot of negative people in the world, and I wanted to surround myself with as many positive people as I could, and people that had certain things, because then I felt I would be strong enough to help other people in whatever way. But if I surrounded myself with negative people, then they beat me down, and then before you know it, I mean, do you surround yourself with a positive camp? Is that a big thing for you?
As much, you can't avoid negativity in the world today. It's become pervasive.
Yeah.
And there's certain close friends of mine who are caught up. Do you hear that siren? Just in
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah.
They're caught up. There's certain friends of mine who are caught up in the negativity of their lives. Of course, I'm going to be there for them. They've been close friends for 40 years. I'm not going to say, oh, fuck you because you're not positive. Fuck that. People need you when they need you. I have a good friend whose 25-year marriage was ended by COVID. She lost her husband and
Wow.
couldn't go see him because it was the beginning of COVID when they didn't allow you to go to the hospital to see your loved one, which is another draconian kind of thing put out there. But anyway, so things happen. I try to surround myself with positive people, but things happen. I just, life unfolds as it should. You don't push it, you don't shove it. You kind of just go where the door is open and someone says, come on in. You go through that door. You don't go through the door that says, do not enter. But I want to go there, you say to yourself, because they've got $2 drinks. I want to, but it says, do not enter. And this is saying, hello, come here. You go through that door and at least check it out.
Yeah.
You have nothing to lose. Check it out and see if it's right for you.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, I was going to ask you. I mean, you've toured the world. You've been all over everywhere. And I mean, is there a particular criteria now for you in your career where you would say you've still got a goals list, a Nicky Siano goals list? Because I mean, you've done so many fabulous things throughout your career. Do you still have a goal list? Do you still have things that you want to achieve, and you say, "Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it," because I mean, well, I'm amazed by people's motivation in life, and I want to know what yours is.
I learned when I was a little kid and looking back on my life that without goals, you can become very negative in on yourself, and
Yeah,
it could cause other problems. I mean, not having a goal in my life when I was 18 because I had achieved being the best DJ in New York is what I wanted to be at 16. And at 18, I sort of was.
yeah, you were.
If I wasn't the best, I was in the top three.
You were the
So,
best, Nicky. You were the best.
so for a while, I was considered the best. And so I needed another goal. And I
Mm.
didn't know that because I was a kid. I didn't have it figured out. So yes, I have goals. Yes, I do look forward to achieving things. I also look forward to a real pleasant conversation with a good friend of mine who centers me in a lot of ways, and I help her in a lot of ways. And that's something I look forward to every day or every other day. Um, and it's important.
No, for
So
sure.
there's a goal there. And like in my, my job, my career, and there's also a personal kind of goal in my growth and change as a person. Both of those things I think, have to be intertwined for you to be
Balanced.
happy in life and
Yeah,
be
yeah,
fulfilled.
yeah. So if you were to, I mean, this podcast goes out to music students as well who are starting out their career, and I always ask every guest that I have on my podcast about this because I think it's so valuable with the experience that you have. If you were giving someone advice today with the experience that you have, um, to begin their careers, a little piece of Nicky Siano magic, what advice would you give them?
Okay, I'll give you a phrase that someone said to me for a year until it clicked in my head. Fear is lack of faith.
Amazing.
And that's it. Fear is lack of faith. So when you come against that fear, think about that. Fear is lack of faith.
I love that.
Could be
I love
faith
that.
in yourself. Yeah,
I love that. I love that. That's a
I
good.
know. This guy said it to me for a year, and I was so. This is when I got sober in '83, but I've used since then. But I'm back on the wagon, thank God. And anyway, this guy has said this to me for a year, and one day I went, "Oh shit! Fear is lack of faith, and I can have faith in anything." I can have faith in Mr. Potato Head. I heard yesterday. But really, no, you can have faith in a good friend. You can have faith in a universal energy.
Yeah.
You can have faith in yourself. There
Fun,
you
fun. I
go.
love that. I love that. I absolutely love that. So, what does the future hold for Nicky then? I mean, what? I mean, you've got this fabulous book out that's on Patreon. People can go to Patreon. They can get into the Nicky Siano book. Are you planning a documentary? Is there? Are
Well,
we
I
going to?
was incredibly lucky. I mean, I've been lucky all my life. It's just how this thing has unfolded is it's amazing to me, dauntingly amazing. Um, we have like an hour and 20 minutes of footage from the gallery. Now, no one has that because it was the 70s and video wasn't invented yet. You had to come in with a film camera and a crew. And lo and behold, students from New York Tisch University, which is one of the top film schools in New York, their graduating class came to the gallery one night and said, "We got to make a movie here." And they did. It never came out. And the footage is all mine. My cousin and I paid for it, and he died and it came into my lap. Yeah, we'd like to use it for a documentary, and I'm working with the director, Luke Poling, who did a fabulous movie about a writer. Um, I can't think of the name of it. Too full. This is too full, this brain. And his name is Luke Poling. You can look him up. And he is convinced that this footage and just a slight narrative would be an incredible film. And I've seen what he's done so far with it, and it's pretty amazing to me. So we're gonna go for it. We're going for it.
Fantastic. That sounds incredible. I mean, I think a Nicky Siano documentary and putting the history right and putting the legacy in the right place for me is super important.
Roy,
I mean,
you're so sweet. You're saying all the you're saying all the right things.
listen.
Are
I
you
know.
married?
I was going. I was going to ask you, Nicky. You've obviously came across so many superstars, so many people that have went to, whether it's the loft, whether it's Studio 54, whatever. You came in and they've been on the stage. You've been DJing. You've been the MD of this whole scene. the musical director of it all. Is there? I mean, who? No, but it's the truth. It's the truth. You're the MD. You're the guy. You're deciding.
Wow.
I mean, and when you put it down to that, you know, that incredible responsibility and weight. But when you look at that, I mean, out of all the artists and all the people, was who inspired you the most? Who did you get the right energy from? Who did you know? I mean, because even back in those days, you know, I mean, there were some stars that were not, they were maybe becoming stars, but they weren't really major stars. I mean, was there people that inspired you that you thought, yeah, you're going to be somebody special?
There's two DJs that really inspired me the most, and Michael Capella, who is a little known DJ, and David Mancuso. And that was really where I saw the light at the end of the tunnel, you know. Oh, David Rodriguez as well. There were three of them. So, but David Mancuso built an environment, and that to me was so impressive. And when I listened to his ideas, they made such sense that I sort of built on them and went in my own direction to build the gallery.
Incredible story, Nicky. I mean, I know how precious your time is. I know how busy your life is, and I mean, I'm just so honored to have had you on. I ask all my guests this, though, Nicky, to if I was to play you out on a song of your choice, anything that you decide that you want to go out on, what song's it going to be?
It's got to be Message. It's got to be Love Is a Message.